We are starting a revolution, a consciousness revolution, one thought at a time.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore, this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
To be a part of the revolution, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. Share your thoughts on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chat at kcorradio.com.
It is a revolutionary movement.
And now, the host of Consciousness Revolution, Kaarin Alisa.
And welcome back to the Consciousness Revolution. If you're just joining us, we're here today with Garnet Schulhauser. We'll be bringing him on in just a moment. Carrie did drop off at the end of the last segment. She's not back yet, but hopefully she will be back within a few minutes. Obviously, some technical connectivity issues going on there. So let's go ahead and introduce our guest today. As I said, his name is Garnet Schulhauser. Garnet has written a series of books on his exceptional experiences traveling with one of his spirit guides named Albert. He's been all over the universe and learned some extraordinary truths about life, death, and everything in between. His, as I said, his spirit guide is named Albert, and Garnet's books are fascinating. I definitely recommend them. Thank you for joining us today, Garnet, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Kaarin. I'm delighted to be here.
Such a joy to have you here. Now, Garnet, your first book was called Dancing on a Stamp. Is that correct?
That's right.
Uh-huh. And that I've not read that one. I read one of your later books. But tell us, I assume in there is a great opening about how you met Albert. Would you want to fill us in on that?
Indeed. This was back in 2007, Kaarin, and I was still practicing law then. And I was strolling down the street one sunny afternoon in May in where I was practicing in Calgary. And all of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, a homeless man just jumped right in front of me and stopped me in my tracks. And I had seen homeless people on the street before. Uh-huh. My usual tactic was just to do a quick sidestep and go around them because they were often panhandling for money. Anyway, this homeless man was different because he had these amazing, dazzling, sparkling blue eyes that sort of riveted me to my right there on the pavement. I just stood still. I couldn't move, and his eyes were sort of doing two things at once. The first thing was I felt that his gaze was penetrating very deeply, right down to the depths of my soul, and I sensed that he knew everything about me, everything I'd ever said or done, all my hopes and aspirations, all of my fears and anxieties, and even my deepest and darkest secrets. Which was strange because we had never met before. I'd never seen this man before. But I didn't feel violated, Kaarin, because at the same time, his gaze was sending me this wave, this gush of pure, unconditional love that was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security and well-being. It was an amazing feeling, something I'd never, ever felt before in my life. So I just stood there basking in the gaze from this man, quite enjoying it. It was like I was in a time warp. I don't know how long I stood there. I didn't really care how long I stood there. I could have stood there forever, letting this man send me this wave of well-being towards me. And then he broke the spell after some time, I'm not sure how long, and he said to me, "Why are you here?" Then he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. And after a few minutes, when I collected my wits finally, I decided I better go find this guy because I was very curious, like, who was he and why did he stop me? So I went into the store to try to find him. There was only one entrance and one exit, and he hadn't come out, but he wasn't in the store anywhere. Looked around, he was gone. I went back out on the street, and I walked up and down the street for several blocks, but he had seemingly disappeared into thin air. Really aroused my curiosity, and so as I was walking back to my office just after that, I resolved to myself that I had to really come back the next day and see if I can find this man. It was like a compelling force telling me that I had to go back and find this guy. So the very next day, very same time, I went to the very same street, and I walked up and down for several blocks. Couldn't find him. And finally, when I was about to give up, I spotted him sitting on a bench all alone. So I walked up to him and I said, who are you and why did you stop me the other day? And he says, I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey. So then my skeptical lawyer brain kicked in, Kaarin, and I said to him, well, why do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because you look like sleeping on the street for weeks and you smell like a dead fish. Well, he just gave me a big grin. He said, looks can be deceiving because you look like you're a very successful lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade. He said, you can turn around and go back to your office and see if you can find the answers to all those questions you've been asking throughout your life in all those emails waiting for you on your computer. Or you can sit down and have a chat with me. So luckily my intuition kicked in and it was screaming at me saying, you have to sit down and talk to this guy. I mean, what do I have to lose? Half an hour of my day? It was, I had to explore it further. I had to find out more about this guy. So I sat down and we began a dialogue. It was a dialogue that went off and on for the next several months. And I found out early on his name was Albert and that he was really one of my spirit guides in disguise. And he said that he had appeared to me in physical form to get my attention because he had a mission for me. Basically, he wanted to, he was going to answer all the questions I'd been asking myself, all the eternal questions of life, like who am I? Why am I here? What's my life purpose? What happens to me when I die? He said, I'm going to answer your questions and I'm going to answer a bunch more that'll pop into your mind. And then he told me early on that he wanted me to write a book about his answers, about his revelations. And so it was quite an amazing dialogue. And I found out he appeared in physical form for the first 3 meetings. After that, he was just a voice in my head and we communicated by telepathy. And he told me that I was the only one who could see him in physical form. And that if somebody had been walking by the bench that day, they would have seen me sitting on the bench by myself, talking to myself, or seemingly talking to myself. So it's quite interesting. I was the only one that could see him. Actually, I could feel him too, because I did at one point actually reach out and touch his shoulder, and he was just as solid as anybody else. But that was his way of manifesting himself for me. And he said that he did that to ease me into the conversation, because had he just suddenly, out of the blue, started talking to me as a voice in my head, I probably would have thought I was losing my mind. So this way he eased me into it, because I could, there he is, he's sitting there, he's a real guy. And then when he came through telepathically, I recognized his voice, I knew who he was, so I was quite comfortable communicating with him thereafter, even though he wasn't appearing in physical form any longer. So that was the beginning of it. And so as a result of my dialogue with him, which went on, as I said, for several months, and he asked me to write a book about it, I was reluctant at first to write it, because I'd never even dreamed of writing a book before. It just wasn't even on my radar screen. But he persisted, and so gradually I sort of caved in, wrote the manuscript, and then when I had it all ready, then I hesitated, and I thought, all the people in my life to that stage, all my law colleagues and partners and friends and everybody else, this was something very, very uncharacteristic for me. If I publish this book, they're going to see me in a much different light, and I wasn't sure whether they would like it. And I was afraid of being rejected and made fun of, and having people think that I had gone senile. Because people, nobody would imagine that I had a spirit guide, or that I could speak to my spirit guide. And so I hesitated for a while. Finally, I said, to heck with it, let the chips fall where they may. And I found a publisher, got it published. And sure enough, some of my old friends and clients basically shunned me, and I know that they didn't speak to me, so I know they probably thought I was crazy. But I found a lot of other new friends along the way who really appreciated what I wrote and loved the fact that I was being Albert's messenger. And so overall, it's been a very positive experience, and that really set me off on a new path. Because about a year after I met Albert, I decided that practicing law was irrelevant. I wasn't happy with it, so I retired about a year later, and then set off on this new course with Albert, writing his first book, and then writing, I've now written 3 more after that, two of which have been published. The 4th one will be released later this summer. So it's been quite a trip with Albert, and it's been a real life experience for me, a life-changing experience.
Indeed. And in fact, I think it's a third book, Dancing Forever with Spirit is the one that I read. And
That's actually the second book. Yeah.
oh, that's the second book. Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful.
The third book is Dance of Heavenly Bliss.
Okay, wonderful. Well, your experience is one that very few people have. Many of us listen to our guides and masters, but very few of us actually get to them in physical form in their space where you can touch them and hold on to them. What an amazing experience, Garnet. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it was indeed. It was very transformational. And I think in some ways, I think Albert felt he had to appear physically, sort of as a means of like hitting me over the head with a 2x4 to get my attention, because otherwise
Right.
I might have ignored it, So that probably just says I'm a little more obtuse than most people. So he had to really work harder at getting my attention and bringing me into the fold. So, and I'm glad he did. And some people have said, well, what happens if you had just walked away that day and hadn't bothered to seek him out? Would he have come back in another format, another way? I said, I don't know. I hope he had a plan B. He's refused to answer that question. He says it's hypothetical because I got you on the first plan, so there we are.
Well, my experience, Garnet, is that these guides and masters that we listen to, they got a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, a plan E. I mean, they just keep going. When they want to get through, they work on it. They do it.
Oh, you're quite right. I've learned from experience that you can't. Spirit is very determined, and like when he was trying to convince me to write my first manuscript, I was dragging my feet, but he sort of gently, persuasively kept at me, and eventually I've learned since then that I should just not argue with him. If he wants me to do something, I just do it.
Indeed, I know the feeling really well. Like you, I was cajoled into writing books for Spirit as well, so I know what that's like. And I know what you're talking about, the fear of being shunned and the fear of people thinking you're crazy. I certainly went through that too. So I really want a big shout out and good for you for not listening to those fear voices and allowing yourself to move into your truth, the new truth that showed up for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm entirely happy with my new path, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Fantastic. So it's better than being a lawyer, huh?
Oh, way better. Way better.
I can imagine. So, Garnet, when I was reading your book, I was really struck with a few things. One, you do have a chapter in this second book, Dancing Forever with Spirit. You have a chapter on Jesus, whom I call Yeshua. And as I think I told you when we were first talking a few months ago, Garnet, that I've written a book about the life of Yeshua that he and I collaborated on, much like you and Albert collaborated on this book. And it's presenting his life. Now, some of the details that you got from the Akashic Record, a little bit different than I got from Yeshua. That's okay. We also know there's more than one reality stream here on this planet. So that doesn't bother me. But I was very taken with some of the things that you said that, for instance, that he was married to Mary Magdalene, and that he had children. And of course, that I can say that he told me as well. That must have made you feel very interesting, maybe trepidatious when you first got that information?
Yeah, it was very fascinating. I didn't actually get to meet Jesus in person on this trip. What Albert did showed me a glimpse of his life from the Akashic records, and so I was a bit surprised. I mean, there's been, as you know, there's been other authors and people who have speculated for a long time that Jesus was in fact married and he had children, and so that's not a new concept. But this was really confirmation for me. It was really a lovely scene. It was his marriage celebration scene with Mary Magdalene. So it was quite fascinating. Sort of just like I was time traveling back to the time when he was walking the earth. So it was really quite interesting. And then Albert sort of filled me in on the details about him being married and having children and so on. And he basically confirmed what he had told me in the first book, which was that you won't find any mention of that in the Gospels or the Scriptures, because that's all been edited out. edited out by the early leaders of the church who didn't want him to be married or to have children. They wanted him to have been celibate and holy and all that sort of thing because of their distorted view about sexual intercourse being unholy, I guess.
Right.
And so
Weird.
that's why they edited it out, and that's why when you read the Gospels now, it's like there's no mention of him being married or having children. So it was really quite fascinating because there it was sort of to me there was actually living proof. But in my third book, I actually had an encounter on the spirit side with Jesus and actually his mother Mary as well, which is really quite fascinating. And so he basically confirmed all the things that I saw in the Akashic records. And he said some fascinating things. And this was interesting for me because I was raised as a Roman Catholic, so in a very strict religious upbringing. And he basically said, he was married, he had children. He said that he came to Earth to help humanity, to help humans sort of take the next step up the spiritual ladder, because we needed some help back then. We need help now too, but we certainly did back then. And he was a master soul, and so he basically agreed to incarnate into the human known as Jesus Christ, to try to help humanity. And because he was a master, he had the ability to focus his thoughts into very powerful beams of energy. And that's how he created his miracles, walking on water and turning water into wine and raising people from the dead. For a master, that was a simple matter of just manipulating the energy in the universe the way that he wanted. And so that's how he created his miracles. And he said that he did that to attract attention, that he wanted to gather a group of followers. He wanted to spread his message of love, compassion, forgiveness, and hope, to the people who followed him, spread it as widely as he could. And that's why he drew attention to himself through these miracles. I said to him, if you could do those miracles, why did you let yourself be crucified? And he said, I could have prevented that, but I thought that dying on the cross would make a very dramatic statement to my followers. And so that's why I allowed it to happen. And of course, he said, knowing, of course, I knew that I wasn't really going to die. I was just going to be, leave the physical body and then later make my ascension up to the spirit side. Excuse me. So that was his story. I asked him how he liked the development of the Christian church after his death. He said their core message is good, of love, hope, compassion, forgiveness. But he said that the leaders of the church throughout, like the early popes and all the way through, they've made their own rules and their own sort of belief systems, which didn't really come from me. And so they've gone off track in a number of ways. But he said they're still doing a lot of good, and he just wishes that they would sort of get more back on track with his core message, which is a very good message.
Indeed, it is. That love is the greatest power in the universe.
Absolutely.
We wholeheartedly associate with that message here at Consciousness Revolution. Garnet, that brings me to a topic. It's religion. We are. I am not a religious person. I never have been. I'm a spiritual person and metaphysical person, and I'm often dismayed at how religions work in this world and how many people really feel that the truth is coming to them through their religion. And what I'd like to ask you is, what has Albert said about this topic of religion?
Well, he says religion is just, most organized religions were organized by men who had their own, holy men who had their own agenda. And most of the time, there were extra things above and beyond what the core message was, and they like to control people. They like to control people through guilt and fear. And the more they can control people, then the more power they have, and the more money they got in the church coffers and so on. That was really their goal for the most part throughout, despite what they said about wanting to follow, for example, in the Christian religion, following the teachings of Christ. They certainly did that to a degree, but then they added on a bunch of embellishments, most of which were designed to, as I say, control the masses. Right. And they did that, through guilt. They would make up a bunch of rules telling you, when, where, and how you could worship God and Jesus. And if you broke those, then they would tell you you're really a bad person because you've offended God. And if you haven't made amends by the time you die, you're going to go before God. He will judge you. And if you've been really bad, he'll send you to an awful place called hell. Well, that's a hell of a, I mean, pardon the pun, that's really a very draconian way of sort of controlling people, inventing this place called hell and saying that if you're offside, that's where you're going to go, not just for a while, but forever, and a very painful place. You're going to be burning in fires. They just invented this as a means of controlling people through fear. So Albert just says, it's all nonsense. There's no hell. There is no judgment after you die. And everyone goes back to the same place after we leave our physical incarnations here, which is the spirit side or the other side, or some people call heaven. Doesn't matter what you call it. That's where you go. That's where you came from before you incarnated. That's where you go back to. And that you go back there no matter what you did. So even murderers and terrorists go back there, which a lot of people find hard to swallow. But that's just the way it is.
That is the way it is, yes.
Everyone goes back to the same place.
Yeah.
He says you have to look at life, our incarnation, life on earth is almost like being actors in a play. And he says if you're an actor on a Broadway play, and the script calls for you to stab and kill another actor, when the curtain goes down and you leave the theater, you don't get arrested by the police for murder because it was all play acting. And the person that you stabbed, the other actor, you're still good buddies. I mean, it's just because it was just a play. And so that if somebody murders you and you both end up back on the spirit side, as you will, you have no anger or need for revenge against the person who killed you on earth. You just realize that person is another soul just like you. And on the spirit side, there's nothing but unconditional love. There are no negative emotions at all. And so you just realize, okay, back on that play on earth, you were playing this part and I was playing this part. In another life, we may reverse the roles. So that's just the way things go.
Oh, indeed. Very much so. I find it was many, many years ago when the first guide or master of mine told me about this idea that everybody goes to the same place regardless of what you've done. And I was a little dismayed at the time. It was a little bit difficult pill to swallow as a young person. But now I don't understand how it could be any other way, because we're all pieces of the divine. We are all beautiful souls equal to one another, and the roles that we play here on the earth plane are for our development, are for sometimes we do it for the development of the people around us, as you've so very clearly stated in your book, and I agree with that. It matches the things I've been told, that we decide before we came here what it is we're going to do, who we're possibly or probably going to meet, and what roles are going to play in our life. So if we're just playing roles, as you say, like an actor on a stage, it can't be held against us when we leave our body.
No, absolutely. You said it very well, Kaarin. That's exactly how it works. It is a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow, especially religious people, because that's just been how they've been raised to think of God and judgment and punishment. But that's just the way that they were raised, as I was now. But I certainly understand that. That's the way that Albert tells me is the way it has to be, and that's the way it is.
Absolutely. And so glad to hear that, actually. If people would allow themselves to let go of their judgment of the actions of other people and really grasp this concept that we all go back to where we belong when we leave here. We all go back to a place where we're loved beyond measure. What a breath of fresh air. What a wonderful thing to hear.
It's very, very refreshing, actually. Incredibly refreshing. And when I tell people what I've learned, and a lot of them just say, well, that's just great. You're just taking a big load off my mind because I've been worrying, is there hell? Will I be judged? And so on. And and now they can say, okay, now I can just continue my journey and try to learn the lessons I was hoping to learn.
And it is the top of the hour. We're going to continue our delightful conversation with Garnet Schulhauser after this break. Come right back.
The consciousness revolution has begun.
It is amazing, is it not?
Connect weekly with others who are waking up and refuse to be confined to a box.
Well, in a few years, it will be a matter of common sense to very many people that they're one with the universe. It'll be so simple.
Consciousness Revolution, hosted by Kaarin Alisa. Live every Monday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the host of the Consciousness Revolution, Kaarin Alisa, go to KaarinAlisa.com. Consciousness Revolution. This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
That the experience you are having, which you call ordinary everyday consciousness, pretending you're not it, that experience is exactly the same thing as it. There's no difference at all.
Do you feel it? A burning notion that there's more to feel, to know, and to embrace. Welcome to the Consciousness Revolution. Consciousness Revolution. The show that explores the world of synchronicities and will stretch your minds to the limits, as well as open it to the unlimited world of possibilities. And now the host of Consciousness Revolution, the sometimes sassy, but always heart-driven, Kaarin Alisa.
And welcome back to the Consciousness Revolution. If you're just joining us, I'm here today with Garnet Schulhauser, author and universe traveler with his wonderful spirit guide, Albert. Now, before we get back to our conversation with Garnet, I just do want to remind people that you can go to transformeverything.com and get more information about the wonderful functional beverages that Carrie and I are selling and using to great benefit, by the way. I did want to mention we've got a bunch of new products coming out. I'm very excited about them. One of them is a decaf version of the coffee. Another, I believe, is a candida cleanse. Another is a heavy metals cleanser. So there's a lot of wonderful things coming down the pike, but you can get information about the first 3-4 beverages that we sell at transformeverything.com. It really will change your life. Now, I do like to start the second hour, of course, also with a quote from the Masters. And today I will give you a quote from the Master Yeshua. And he says, hold on a second, I just lost it here. And if you give me a moment, I'll bring it back. He says, "To be sure, not everyone in Galilee was as blessed as I. Most children, if they were fortunate enough to have a family, had many of the blessings that I mention here. But we did have an oppressor, and he came with a big boot and a sharp spear. His name was Rome, and he was to be feared. Anyone able to read or go to the movies probably already has an idea of how oppressive Rome was to many people, not just my own. And it didn't matter which tyrant was in power or which de facto prefect or king governed locally. The Roman boot was ever present, and his greedy hand was outstretched, grabbing what it could, always with the threat of death at the end of his fingers." And for some reason, I bring that up today because it just kind of reminds me of some of the things going on in the world today. So, Garnet, coming back to our conversation, what does... Talk to us about the other side of the veil.
Sure. Well, the other side of the veil, it's an incredibly beautiful place. On my very first trip, astral trip with Albert, he took me, to the spirit side, and the first place I found myself standing there was in this incredibly beautiful meadow with lush green grass and tall, majestic trees and wildflowers everywhere, with their perfume wafting up. It was just an amazing scene, just very beautiful, very bucolic. And we walked along a sort of a stone path up a low hill, and at the top of the hill I could see a group of souls waiting for me on the bottom side. Mm-hmm. And as we walked down towards them and got closer, my heart skipped a beat because I recognized who they were. It was my mother and father, brother, grandparents, various other relatives who had already passed away, and even my little dog Oscar, who came. He's a miniature schnauzer. He came running around from behind the group, came running towards me with his little tail, wagging his whole body. to greet me.
Oh.
It was a wonderful welcoming party, and Albert says this was just a preview of what I will experience when I cross over permanently from this life. They were there to greet me, so there was hugs all around. I was a little apprehensive about meeting my mother, not because I didn't love her dearly, but because she was a very staunch Roman Catholic religious person, and in my books I'm not really kind to the Catholic Church, so I thought, oh, what is she going to say? But she relieved my anxieties immediately. She gave me a big hug and said, not to worry, you did okay. Everything you wrote in your book is absolutely dead on. And she says, if I was still living back on Earth, I probably wouldn't be very happy with you. But now that I'm here, I can see the whole picture. So that was a big relief for me. So it was very nice. It was really an affirmation of what Albert had told me that before I started astral traveling with him, is that, when you die, you cross over, you're going to be met by a welcoming party. And that party is going to be sort of your parents and grandparents and relatives and all the people that were close to you. They're there to help you transition from the earth plane over to the spirit side, and they'll give you a very loving and warm welcome to make you feel comfortable and to help you, feel good about where you are now, because it's quite a contrast between the earth plane and the spirit side. And so it takes a bit of getting used to. And so that was sort of my experience. He gave me that preview. And then from then we walked into towards this beautiful white city, like the buildings, tall buildings and domes and spires, all white. He called this city Aglaia. He said it's one of the cities on the spirit side. And it was very interesting because walking down the street, we ran into souls. It was like a costume ball because the souls were wearing all kinds of different garments and costumes from many different countries and ages on Earth. And I said to Albert, what's going on? And he said, well, souls often like to appear to others on the spirit side the way that they appeared in one of their favorite past lives. So they'll wear the costume from some life, maybe 14th century England or 18th century Italy or whatever the heck it is, and so that's why all these costumes were so different, very colorful. And he says, but souls can change their appearance over there anytime they want to anything they want, and some souls will just choose to appear as a ball of light. Because that's what we really are. We're beings of energy. We on the spirit side, we're beings of energy. We don't need to eat, drink, sleep, procreate or any of those things. We're just pure energy. And so some souls will just choose to appear that way. But he says no matter what their outward appearance, every soul is easily distinguishable because we all have a unique energy signature. So we can always tell who the other soul is. There's no matter what sort of disguise or costume they're wearing, we always know who it is. So it was very interesting. It was it was fascinating, very colorful. The people were all animated, laughing and talking and just having a great time. It was like and there is nothing but unconditional love over there. There's no jealousy, there's no greed, there's no want for anything, and there's certainly no anger or hate. So it's just a beautiful, wonderful place to be. So that was my first experience on the spirit side. And then later that same trip, he took me to meet with the Council of Wise Ones, which was really a fascinating sort of experience.
So tell us about the Wise Ones.
Well, the Council of Wise Ones is this committee. There was 11 on this committee, very wise and advanced souls. And their job is to oversee all the incarnations on our planet. And so what they do is when people are, when souls are preparing the life plan for their next life on Earth, they will have it reviewed by one of the members of the Council of Wise Ones, and they will give suggestions. They'll say, maybe you're biting off more than you can chew here. Maybe you should back off a bit, or maybe you're taking too much of an easy route. You need to put in a few more lessons. They'll give advice, but the ultimate final decision for each soul belongs to the soul. So nobody tells them where to go or where to incarnate. They just get advice. But these very wise souls have a lot of experience, and they're very helpful in terms of helping us sort of map out our life plans for each life that we choose on Earth. But they had a message for me. The chair of this council, her name was Sophia, and she says, we asked Albert to bring you here because we wanted to give you a message to take back to your fellow humans. And the message was, look, your civilization is at a very advanced stage. You've got very advanced technology, but your spiritual and emotional intelligence has not kept pace. And so too many people on your planet let their negative emotions like fear, anger, hate, greed control too much of their lives. That's why you have so many wars, why you have so many murders and terrorist acts and all the other violent conflicts that happen on your planet day to day, and have all the way through history. And she says, you guys are at the stage now, a very crucial stage, where if you're not careful about what you do, you can end up destroying all human life and all other life on your planet, because you got weapons of mass destruction. If they were unleashed, you could just wipe out all the life on your planet, which is something that they did not want to see. She said they'd seen other civilizations in Earth's past, other human civilizations like Atlantis and Lemuria, rise up to great heights and then crash and burn. And she says they don't want to have our civilization end up in the same boat, because they really think they've seen it too many times. They really want us to get over the hump, to take the next step up the spiritual ladder, and become more enlightened. And so she says, we really need to have you take your message back to Earth. She says that they have been bombarding our planet with all kinds of messages through many different channels all over the world. People who host radio shows like yourself, Kaarin, people who write books, people who speak at conferences, go on TV, and the message is always the same. They're trying to get humans to realize that what we need to do is discard our negative emotions and fully embrace love, compassion, forgiveness. And that's the way that we can, better our civilization, get rid of all the violence and strife, raise our vibrations, and eventually ascend up to our planet in a higher dimension, which a lot of people call the New Earth. So that was her message, like, get with it, guys. And they wanted me to do my best to be a messenger, to spread that message to the people on Earth. And so that was very, it was frightening in a sense that they were basically saying, look, at you guys, you really have to get your act together soon. She wouldn't give a timeline, but she says that, but encouraging in a sense that she said, if we get enough people to change their way of life, and to help those around them change their way of life, she says, you guys can get over this tough spot and take the next step up the ladder towards ascension towards the New Earth. And so it was a very heartfelt message, and I felt really happy that these very wise souls were on our side and were really doing their best to help people on Earth, improve their lives and make life on our planet much more peaceful and loving and more compassionate, and get rid of all the violence eventually if we can. That's really where we have to be headed. So it was quite a message.
I'm so with that message. I agree with you and Sophia so very much, and good for you for coming back and doing the work, putting yourself forward like this, Garnet. It's beautiful and inspirational.
I mean, I felt really sort of empowered after that meeting, and I felt really encouraged, and I felt then, okay, I really know my mission now in this part of my life, and I really have to go forward. And I'm really happy to do it. I really like to broadcast their message, to spread Albert's message, to hopefully to enlighten some people, make them think about why they're here and what they're doing, and make them realize that violence and conflict and hate and fear and all those awful emotions that run amok on our planet are just very destructive, and that we really need to shake free of them. We have to realize that we're all souls on a journey here. We're all connected to each other and connected to the source. So when you see somebody walking down the street, you shouldn't look at that person as being some separate entity, and you shouldn't be fearful because they have a different color skin, or they wear different clothes, or they speak a different language, or worship a different God, because we're all part of the one. And once we realize that, the conflict will just disappear.
Right. Right. Absolutely. This I've seen in my life as I've allowed myself, after a very, very difficult childhood and adolescence and young adulthood, let go of these things in my life to the extent that I have and can continue to do that, the better and better I feel, and the more light and conscious my life becomes. It's just the way to go. Moving toward that place where we all have inner peace. That's the message, don't you think?
Absolutely, and I think that as I said, that more and more people are spreading that message, are speaking to other people in that light, like Albert says, 30 years ago I would not have written my books, and if I had, no one would have read them, because people just weren't ready to to open their minds to that kind of concept. But today, there's more and more people who are becoming more spiritually enlightened, and there's more and more people, people like yourself writing books and hosting radio shows. That wouldn't have happened 30 years ago. And so the fact that it's happening now means more people here are opening their minds to those concepts and are trying to deal with it and try to better themselves. And so we made a lot of progress, Kaarin, but we still have a long ways to go.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. I agree with you on that. Now, Garnet, I always like to give to our audience as much as we can. So do you or Albert have first steps? If somebody is sitting there listening to us right now and says, well, that'd be great. I'd love to start letting go of fear. I'd love to start talking to my masters, my guides. I'd love to open my intuition. I'd like to be part of this movement toward a new earth, as Sophia called it. Then what would you suggest people do next?
Well, one of the first things they can do to try to hear what their guides are telling them, and everyone has 3 or 4 or more guides, and they've been with us right from the day one, right from the time we're born. Their job is to coach us, to send us messages, to try to guide us on the path that we have chosen for ourselves before we're born. The trouble is their messages are very subtle. It's like intuitive thoughts, gut feelings, coincidental events, things like that a lot of people, you can go through your day-to-day life and you get the messages, but you don't hear it or don't recognize it for what it is. So one of the first steps is to try to sit somewhere quietly, to try to meditate, to try to quiet your mind, get rid of all the other thoughts that clutter your mind every day about what happened yesterday or last week or what's going to happen tomorrow, and try to put yourself into the present moment and just try to clear your mind so that the messages from your guides can come through. It's not easy to do it, but eventually, if you practice at it, eventually you'll start to getting more and more of these intuitive thoughts. And you may think those thoughts are just something that you generated. Most of the time, those thoughts come from your guides. And it's sort of like they just pop into your mind and you don't know where they come from, but realize they're coming from your guides. They're trying to tell you which way to turn, excuse me, which way to go, how to proceed in your life to sort of get you through the lessons and the experiences that you need for your development. And so they're there to guide you. So, and they're always going to be telling you to embrace love and compassion. They're always going to try to tell you to discard your negative emotions and not react in a negative fashion to the events that happen in your life. So if you can sort of try to make contact with your guides, you'll find that the more you sit quietly and listen to them, the more and more their messages are going to come through. And then you're going to just feel happier, because then you realize that, okay, even when bad things happen to me on my journey, there's a lesson to be learned there. And that the bad things aren't happening because somebody's trying to punish me, or that God or the universe is trying to teach me, punish me for some of the transgressions that I've done in my life earlier. That you're not a victim. You're there creating your own reality. You have free will to act, and you're trying to make your way through life. And if you realize that every episode in your life, there's something to be learned from it, and you treat it that way, so when bad things happen, you just sort of carry on and say, okay, I'm going to try to understand what I'm supposed to learn from that, and then just move on and keep a smile on your face and laugh your way through. As Albert says, one of the things he's told me is that he said, you have to lighten up. He says, don't take life so seriously, because you can't go wrong. You can't become lost. You're always going to end up back in this wonderful place called the spirit side. And so just, look at it with that point of view, and don't be pessimistic. Appreciate that everything that you're doing is leading towards your further development. And even if you make mistakes or wrong turns, it doesn't matter. It doesn't count. It doesn't keep you here or keep you away from a beautiful place. You're always going back to the spirit side. So he just said, don't take it so seriously. It's not a sentence that you can't ever get out of, because no matter what you do, when you die, you're going back to a wonderful place.
I love it. I so love it that Albert said that, Garnet. You weren't here at the beginning of the show, but every week I start the show with that a master of mine said many years ago, if you wish to become enlightened, simply lighten up. So he agreed with Albert. Absolutely. I love that. And don't you think, I mean, Albert, in your book, Albert shines through with such a lovely sense of humor, and he likes to play and cajole and tease. And I find that too, as I get to know my guides and masters, and even Yeshua, Jesus, such a lovely sense of humor, and loves to come together in happy reverie.
That's exactly right. My experience, Albert is a very funny guy. He likes to poke fun at me at my many human foibles. I have lots of them, and he'll tell me sometimes. He says, humor is alive and well on the spirit side. There's lots of humor over there. He says it's not a solemn place. Like, it's not like a church where you have to sit there and not talk and be very solemn. He says no. It's a very happy, joyous, humorous place where people, make jokes, and they like to laugh a lot. And Albert likes to poke fun at me. I mean, he'll often say, when he's trying to explain something to me that I can't quite wrap my mind around it, he'll say, "Don't worry about it. You'll figure it out when you get to the spirit side. Right now, you're dealing with the limitations of your puny human mind."
Yes.
Which is true.
It's true, and yet it's quite funny.
So yeah, no, I quite enjoy him, and he's very, if he was sort of serious and solemn the whole time, the trips and my experiences with him wouldn't be nearly as much fun. And I just know that he's, he likes to laugh, and he likes, as I say, poke fun at me, and he likes to poke fun at what other humans do. And he says, a lot of times the good souls on the spirit side, when they're looking down at what's happening on our planet, he says they just laugh themselves silly because they can't believe that we would do some of the silly things that we do. And it's quite humorous to them. And of course, once you get here and you pass through the veil of forgetfulness, you don't remember all those things, and so everything here seems very serious. Like,
Right.
I've got to go to work, I got to earn money, I got to put a roof over my head, food on the table, raise my kids, and so on and so forth. It seems like a very serious endeavor. He says, lighten up and enjoy the journey. It's a temporary journey, and it's going to be over before you know it.
I love that. What a great way to end our segment on, Garnet. We're getting down to the bottom of the hour. It has been a joy having you on the show today. Would you please tell people how they can get in touch with you and how they can get your books?
Certainly. The best way to contact me is through my website, which is garnetschulhauser.com. That's hard to remember, so if you Google Dancing on a Stamp or Dancing Forever with Spirit, you can get to my website. And there's information on all of my books. You can download a free excerpt for each book. You can watch a book video. You can dial into my social media sites like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. There's buy links there on my site where you can dial into all the popular online stores like Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can get right to the place where you can buy my books. There's a page there on my website where I have the recordings of all of my radio shows, where you can listen to anyone you want, or listen to all of them. This is show number 120 for me, Kaarin.
Oh, fantastic.
And so all the recordings are there, and my email address is on my website. So if your listeners would like to send me an email with a comment or a question, I'd love to hear from them.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to encourage people to do that. Garnet Schulhauser, thank you for being such a wonderful guest. And everybody, you hold on. We've got one more segment coming up right after this station break.
You're listening to Consciousness Revolution. Hosted by Kaarin, Alisa.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a poor little me.
Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Abandon your fears and be a part of the revolution by calling the hotline number at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. The consciousness revolution has begun.
Here's what happened on the last episode of Three Guys, No Ties.
Two Kentucky men who appered on a cable television hunting show have been fined. Yep. Damn, they are in trouble, aren't they?
At least they are tonight. Are they going to jail for 15, or they just can't?
Yeah, they got no income. I mean, they can't get help. They can't go hunting. They got no TV shows.
Life ain't worth living no more.
Oh, don't be saying that. I get people doing crazy stuff live on Facebook now. Come on.
3 Guys, No Ties. Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 Pacific on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
1 million miles till midnight. A story of timelines, artificial worlds, simulated races, and the galactic imprint. And the destiny of a blue world called Earth. 1 million miles till midnight, written by Solaris Blue Raven, is a journey through the mind's eye which allows the reader to surf a wave of technological and multidimensional intellect, revealing a bridge between conscious design and the truth. A multidimensional bleed-through awakens the world of artificial intelligence to set sail into the frontiers of a vast multiverse, morphing planets and terraforming ascended worlds beyond the linear programs of a fated race. 1 million miles till midnight will awaken, inspire, prepare, and enlighten one to the many multidimensional states of consciousness and worlds we reside in. With every cell and atom, we are this truth and multiverse. 1 million miles till midnight. Written by Solaris Blue Raven. Available now at Amazon.com and GlenNT.com. Don't wait. Get your copy today.
Monday nights are about to become hauntingly good, as Reverend Sean Whittington possesses the airwaves with Vegas Supernatural. Tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for Vegas Supernatural, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. There's a war raging between good and evil. The question is, which side are you fighting on? Tune in Monday nights as Reverend Sean Whittington sets the new standard for paranormal radio with some of the most influential personalities in the world today. Vegas Supernatural, hosted by Reverend Sean Whittington, every Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The one show even the devil doesn't want you to hear.
We are starting a revolution, a consciousness revolution, one thought at a time.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
To be a part of the revolution, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. Share your thoughts on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chat at kcorradio.com.
It is a revolutionary movement.
And now, the host of Consciousness Revolution, Kaarin, Alisa.
And welcome back. Before the break, we were talking with Garnet Schulhauser about his experiences wandering through the universe with his spirit guide Albert. It was a joyous conversation. I hope you all got as much enlivening sense of the universe as I did when we were talking about it. And we did talk some about Yeshua, known to many of you as Jesus. And I thought that in this last segment, what I might do is read an excerpt from my book, Journey of a Prophet. This is the book that Yeshua and I wrote together on his life. It's from his memory, written in the first person. You know, he had more than one time in his life where he was given the opportunity to ascend. He was a master, and he came here to do some things for us, for humanity. He's still here, still working on those wonderful that wonderful mission that he has to help us rise out of the darkness and into a higher state of consciousness and vibratory life that we can produce for ourselves. So in that vein, I thought I would read from chapter 37 in the book, Journey of a Prophet. And this is during a time in his life where he was actually known by a different name, the name Isa, spelled Issa in our language. And so here he is, he's about to ascend, and he wakes up. I seemed to awaken after a long sleep. As my eyes adjusted to the scene around me, I realized I was standing in a field. The day was warm, and the light I would have expected coming from the sun was instead coming from every point above me. Flowers bloomed in carpets scattered about the field, flowers like none I had ever seen before, brilliantly colored and sensual in display. In the distance, I could see trees swaying. The oddest thing was the silence. There was no sound, until I had that thought, and suddenly there were birds chirping and plants rustling. Crickets joined in the reverie for good measure. As I stood enjoying the warmth of the light on my skin, a voice spoke from behind me. "Isa, welcome." I turned around to see a being standing in the field not 6 feet from me. Hello, where am I?" I asked. "Why, you're in a way station, if you will. You were about to move into the next phase of your existence, and I thought that perhaps we should have a chat before there was no turning back." The being had no distinguishing features I could rely on to ascertain if this was a man or a woman. It was unsettling. "Would the form of a woman settle you?" the being said, as its features morphed into those of my mother, Mary. Yes, this is a much easier form to encounter, familiar." She smiled. "Very good, then let us begin." We chatted for a long time. She wanted to know my thoughts on the situations of my life. We laughed easily, and I felt at home and comfortable with her. Then she told me more of why I was here with her. I had achieved a level of mastery. I had demonstrated an ability to be the very substance of love. When that occurred, I no longer needed to incarnate. I was released from the binds of the body, and now I could move on to lighter vibratory levels of being. "Is that something you want, Isa?" she asked. "It seems a shame to have spent so many years gaining mastery of my abilities to then just walk away without using them," I replied. "Was all this diligent preparation just for personal gain?" "You tell me." "Well, I looked into the distance. I can't see it. I can't see that all those people worked so hard, all that energy expended just to give me the opportunity to ascend." I faced her and said, I don't want to just take my toys and go home." She smiled. "Isa, you're not a petulant child. It wouldn't be selfish. Every being that rises back to the creative source gives a great gift to humanity. But I think I'm poised to give more than that. I may be lost in self-aggrandizement, but it feels like I have more to do, work that can have a much greater effect than merely adding one more speck to the sea of lifted souls." Her eyes moistened. "The sea of lifted souls, as you put it, are still growing and living and making things happen. There are levels of life ahead that are very rewarding. You were not yet to that plane when I interrupted your journey, so you've not seen it." I closed my eyes, tried to imagine what it would be like to move on, and I couldn't. "I can't see it. I'm overflowing with love for my brothers and sisters. I feel connected to them. It's as if I am they. That connection is calling me. Walking away now would be like turning my back on myself." She stepped closer and placed her hand on my shoulder. "Would you like to have a new perspective of that which you call humanity?" Yes, I would." She took my hand, and the field melted away. We floated above the earth, looking down on it. It was a brilliant blue, and from this distance I could see land masses protruding from the blueness. She began to pick out individual scenes of life and show them to me. They were people I didn't know, caught in energetic shackles. I saw beings trying to find truth and light, only to turn away from their creator and plunge back into the mire of illusion. Pain was rampant. Lies, cheats, betrayals were pervasive. Death was often too early. These people were ignorant of their own wealth, unable to see the glory of self that existed just outside their usual perception. At first I was enraged. It seemed unfair for these beautiful beings to wallow in pain and separation when the truth was so magnificent. Why is everyone so lost to themselves? I asked her. Well, this is the human condition. They are subjugated to the will of others. Everyone. No one is free. The magnitude of what she was showing me began to sink in. Every being had a puzzle to work out that might take 1,000 lifetimes to solve. Where are the enlightened ones? I asked. Well, when those like yourself become free, they move on. But all who remain are held prisoner in these illusions, to their own pain of separation from the source of all things. Some who have lifted may extend a hand now and then and offer a path through the fog, but it's rare, Isa. Most who can leave. But we're all part of Source. We come from Source. Why doesn't the Creator ease the path? She sighed deeply. The creative Source can't prevent suffering. Once a soul is created, it has free will. That's you, isn't it? You are the creative Source. You are my Creator. She smiled at me and nodded her head. That's why you took the form of my mother. It was a clue. She nodded again. I looked back down at Earth, and even though I saw the subjugation and pain of abject poverty of spirit, even though I saw the horror people inflict on themselves and others as a result, I could only feel love for those souls that kept going, kept searching. They knew in their core there was more to life, something greater than their temporal circumstances, and they couldn't help but eventually look for it. I love them. I just love them, I said. I am in them. She took my hand again and we melted back into the field. Isa, what would you like to do? I want to go back. Why? So I can help them find their way to Source. They're each of them as beautiful and wondrous as you. They are part of you. I am part of them. We are all part of the whole. I want to help the whole escape the bonds that hold the separation in place. Well, that may take a while. Maybe you can't do it in one lifetime. Isa, are you prepared to fail? I looked into her eyes, and no part of me felt failure was an option. I don't see failure. Isa, failure is always an option, as is the ability to try again. Do I have what it takes to succeed? Is this a fool's errand I want to engage in here? Well, you tell me. I took a deep breath, and my mind reeled. Before me stood the Creator, empowering me to answer my own question. How could I know if my answer was the right answer, or if I was fooling myself? She smiled. If you are part of me, as you say, how could you not know just as well as I? Tears began to trickle down my cheeks. I want to go back. I want to be the instrument that ends this separation from Source. What do I need to do to make that happen? She grasped both my hands and looked deep into my eyes. I could feel her gaze pierce to the very heart of me. If you go back, she said. You will again become subjugated. When you do, you might lose your conviction. You might lose the knowledge of why you are there. You'll have to climb back out of the mire, a feat you have already accomplished. But I warn you, Isa, it might be more difficult the second time. I ask you again, are you prepared to fail? I was resolute. If I did it once, I can do it again. I know my purpose now with greater clarity than I ever have before. I want to go back. Then you truly are a son of man. She placed her hand on my cheek, and it sent a jolt of energy through my spine. She continued, my son, you are glorious in my eyes. Try to remember as you do our work that I am always with you. And that is chapter 37, called Source, from the book Journey of a Prophet. I thought it was quite interesting. Yeshua's first encounter with his creator there. He had several more over his sojourn on earth, but that was the first one, empowering him to know himself, to know his path and where he was going. You know, that's what we all want. I've never met a being that was willing to talk to me about what was truly inside them, that didn't want to know who they were and why they were here. They're universal questions. We've talked a lot on this show today about how do you listen? How do you listen to your guides, your masters? How do you listen to your source? How do you listen to your inner being? And everything I know comes to the fore to answer these questions, with the first step being you have to want it. You have to want it, and you have to intend it. It isn't enough just to say, oh, I want that, and then go about your life with no action. You have to intend to want to grow, to become more conscious, to know yourself and what you're here for, to be able then to take the actions that move you forward in a dynamic, conscious fashion. This show is called Consciousness Revolution for a reason, because consciousness is at its core the very thing that will set you free. The more you know, the higher your vibration, the more you accept, the more love you allow, the more compassion you have, the more forgiveness you're willing to bring into your life and the lives of those around you. The higher your vibration will be, the more you are free. It will set you free. Nothing is more subjugating than fear. Nothing is more subjugating than the emotions that fear bring to the table in your life. Guilt, shame, spite, remorse, all of these feelings. They only have one thing in common, fear. And they all act to bring you down to a place where you cannot see yourself. If you really want to know who you are, stop. Back up. Intend consciousness. Intend to make it so. And then be willing, like Garnet was willing, be willing without fear to put yourself forward in the world in actions that move you to freedom. That's what consciousness is all about. It's about freedom. That's what we want here. If there's one thing that I can say to you today that means more to me than anything else I have ever heard, is that you are a spark of the divine. You are a spark of source. You are not a low person. You are not disabled. You are not without the tools to realize your dreams. It all comes down to letting go of fear and allowing that power of source, which is powered by love, to be the overarching power in your life. I don't care if you see God as a being, you see God as a source power. I don't care if you don't believe in God at all, but please believe in yourself. Believe in that spark of life that you have inside. Believe in what you came here to do, even if you don't yet know what it is. And if you do know what it is and you're walking away from it, turning your back on it, which I did for so many years and which Garnet did for a little while, if you're walking away from that which you know, stop, turn around, embrace that knowledge, and have the courage to move forward with whatever action it takes to push that agenda forward, because each and every one of you is important here. Without you, we would be nothing. You came here for a reason. I came here for a reason. Let's embrace those reasons and move this forward. Let's get out of this mire of subjugation. Okay. I am partnered with you. You are partnered with me. We're all here together in this little boat called Earth. So let's make it a good one. Carrie wasn't able to be with us here at the end of the program. We had some technical difficulties. I think she lost her connection up on the mountain. But she will be here next week. And if at any time during this week you think about what I've said and you want to talk with me, give me a shout out. You can always send me an email from the contact page at KaarinAlisa.com. You can also leave me a message on the phone. The phone is displayed at Rabika.com, RABIKA.com. On the contact page is a phone number. You can always call and leave a message there. You can catch me on Facebook at Kaarin Alisa on Facebook, or Kaarin Alisa Author, I think is one of my other pages. Just reach out. Let me know how you're doing. What do you think about this idea that you are important, that without you, we would be diminished? I'd love to hear. Next week on the Consciousness Revolution, we're going to welcome one of our favorite guests. His name is Don Joseph Goey. He's been on our show before. He has written 2 books, the latest one called The End of Stress. Don is a master of neuroplasticity and how to bring an end to stress in your life. So if stress is one of the things that's causing you consternation and difficulty and getting out of the fear, he can certainly help us help you figure that out. The End of Stress is a wonderful book. It's like having a workshop in a book. He's set it up so expertly so that, you do one chapter and do what it says, and then the next few days later you do the next chapter, et cetera, et cetera. It's wonderful. It's like being taken by the hand and led toward a stress-free life. And I do want to remind you that coming up next on our program, not on our program, but on our station on KCOR, are the show Vegas Supernatural, hosted by Reverend Sean Whittington. Then The Real Paranormal Activity, hosted by Aaron Hunter. After that is the Paranormal Vault, hosted by BK Mojave and The Watcher. More shows in our mysterious Monday lineup to open your minds to what else is possible. So important. So stay tuned to this station after our show. Much more joy coming to you from these other shows. And please remember to take care of yourself this week. You know, I did download the idea that there's a lot of emotions this week going around in the world, that they are going to try and dominate our energy and our time. Rise above it. Do what the Rebecca suggested that we do at the beginning of this show. Rise above it. Bring the people you love close to you. Love your home. Bank on the knowledge that you have inside, what you already have learned and known in the wisdom of your soul is truth. And move yourself forward this week as best you can. It's really important. So I also want to thank our producer and station manager, Tina Marie, for her exceptional talent and her heart. Thank you, Tina. You make a difference in the world. And so now, as we close this segment of the Consciousness Revolution, I'm going to wrap you all in a powerful cloak of divine love. This cloak will help you awaken to the infinite possibilities that exist in each and every moment that you choose to live consciously. We've talked a lot about that today. So I do wish that for you. I wish consciousness upon you. It is, as we talked about earlier, it's the way to freedom. You want to get out of subjugation? Get away from other people ruling your life. Get away from fear running your thoughts. Become conscious. Make it so. And as you go about your life this week, remember to lead with your heart. Remember, Carrie and I talked at the beginning of the show of that head-heart connection. So important. Your heart is your truth meter. I want you to also to express through your passion. Passion is the flame that ignites our thoughts and moves our manifestations forward. I want you to expand the limits of your mind. Open up. There's more to life than you see now. So much more. It's time to embrace your own consciousness revolution. And of course, as you know, the magic word to move life forward is always the shortest affirmation I know. It's the word yes. So let's shout out the magic word all together now. And yes! Woo-hoo! Bye, everyone. We'll see you next week. Stay conscious.
The Consciousness Revolution has begun.
It is amazing, is it not?
Connect weekly with others who are waking up and refuse to be confined to a box.
Well, in a few years, it will be a matter of common sense to very many people that they're one with the universe. It'll be so simple.
Consciousness Revolution, hosted by Kaarin Alisa. Live every Monday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the host of the Consciousness Revolution, Kaarin Alisa, go to KaarinAlisa.com. Consciousness Revolution. This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of